Hello folks and welcome. Have a subscriber request. Someone wanted to know how to do login sounds on the Xfce desktop, and that person was watching my video on the Cinnamon desktop. Well, the Xfce desktop is not that straightforward, but you do have the actual same sound file that the Linux Mint Cinnamon desktop uses for login, believe it or not. And I'll show you how to actually do that either using a command line entry on your startup folder, which is performed during login, or you can use a script file, which I recommend, and it would be a 2-line script file. Extremely easy to use. I can teach anyone how to write that. We can even use different file formats like your favorite songs, even the whole song or part of the whole song. And we can do some sound edits also with whole songs to make them shorter, or even a couple seconds. If any of that stuff interests you, then continue watching. Filming in 1080. The subscription logo should be in the corner there on the right-hand side. I do recommend that. I have well over 500 videos on all kinds of things. So the first thing I want to talk about, and I'll show you a text file on this, we're going to be adding something to the session and startup. All right, what I have in here though is I have two of these. One of them is going to be using the Canberra player, and the other one's going to be using M player. The Canberra player is very limited as far as sounds, and but I'm going to dump both of these and show you how to do this completely from scratch. Okay, so I'm going to start with introducing our fictitious user for today, which is Tim. Again, it's just a made-up name. So Tim has lots of music. Now, however he acquired this music, you can of course download maybe music from your cloud services also, or however he got them. But Tim has got a lot of albums, and he may want to use one of these songs, maybe his favorites, to stick that in login sound during logins. So what I did here, or Tim, is make a folder called login. And the reason I'm doing that is because I have everything inside this container that I need. That includes the songs in different formats, and including this sound here. Okay? That is actually, believe it or not, in your Xfce desktop. And it's the same sound as the login sound for the Cinnamon desktop. So the user was asking me how to do this. So I'm going to not only show you that you can play that sound, but you can go carry it a little bit further and use your own favorite songs in MP3 formats, WMAs, or even silly videos if you like. So I'm going to start with the README login tip file, and then slowly migrate over to a script file. And this will be 2 lines only. And I think anyone can write this. And then copy it. So let me open the README file, and feel free to make screenshots at any time, folks. All right, we are going to create something that does auto login sound, and that's done through here. We are going to use session and startup, and we're going to do an add button. And the first one I'm going to do is command line. And then we can do script files. All right, so we're going to create something, but again, I do recommend scripts because they're easy to use and more versatile. But I am going to first introduce you to something that you may never heard of. Canberra. It's a player. It plays in the background. I'm going to open up the software manager and let you see that this file is actually installed, and you more likely will have it installed on your system also. This again is an Xfce desktop, not Cinnamon. Canberra GNOME session login and logout sound events. And you can see there's no reviews on this thing. It's very limited in information, but nonetheless you will have it installed. Okay, so to play it, I'm going to first give you the sample of it. You already have this, by the way, believe it or not. I'm hitting enter. All I did was cut and paste that. So I typed this out, of course. This is something that you don't have. You'll have to type it yourself, and I do recommend that you just grab a hold of a text editor. Xedit is the one that's installed already on the Xfce and Cinnamon desktops, or you can use your favorite. All right, so basically, let me start on the tail end and then I'll go to the front end. So this part here is where the sound is actually located. And believe it or not, it is actually in your system. So Thunar is the file manager for Xfce. Nemo is in Cinnamon. So we're going to go with Thunar today. File system, USR. Open that up, find share. Type in sound and look for a folder with the folder name sounds with an S. I know you can see a couple of sound files in here, but look for the Linux Mint folder. Open that up and go to the stereo one. So the complete path is USR share sounds Linux Mint stereo. This sound familiar? If you have ever heard a Cinnamon desktop, by default, that is the noise that it makes. And this is the default player for Xfce currently, and I think also for Cinnamon. All right, so these are OGG files for the most part, with the exception of that one. So what I did was I copied these two out of this folder and threw them elsewhere. I threw them into here. So create yourself a folder, and you can colorize these things also if you like. I just highlighted that with green so it stands out. And what I did was I threw that in there, these two OGG files. One is log in and log out. They almost sound the same, but they're not. The rest of these are songs that I got from Tim's music folders that basically have been renamed with simple names on them. And I do recommend that you use simple names when you do this if you're using script files. But we're going to first talk about the README file, doing this with a command line entry. So let me explain the whole thing to you. Canonbera is a player. So Canonbera -gtk-play space -f is the play command for that. Then a space USR, remember the /, and the complete path to that file. Don't forget, it's how the folders are spelled. They're Linux Mint with an upper L and M. But that's the direct path. So if I highlight the whole thing in a text editor, like I'm doing here, I can copy it and quickly test it out in terminal. Okay, I'm doing a paste command and hitting enter. And you can hear it, it's working. Now that I know it works, I can take the line and copy this and then open up your session and startup. So if you want me to do this from scratch, here, settings, session and startup, application auto start, add, paste the command in there. Okay, then give it a name. Okay, so let me get rid of that extra symbol and give it a name. Now I like to have 2 A's so it puts stuff at the top. You don't have to. That's just one of my shortcuts. So AA login sound. It's about the only place that you'll notice me use a space. All right, now this is going to be using Canberra player. All right, so let's go look at the command line. This is not a script file. This is a direct command. So if you don't use a text editor like I'm doing here, it's easier to see on the screen before you paste them in there. When you're dealing with this, make sure that the proper spacing and dashes and all that good stuff is in there properly for this to work. But I cannot test it in here until I log out and log in, but I'm going to finish this nonetheless. So this is going to trigger on login after I create this. So when you first do this, you may see, oh, it's not there. Actually, it is. It's at the bottom when you create new events. If you want, click all settings and go back in there and it'll be re-alphabetized starting with the AA's. That's why I put those in there. So you can see the command is Canonbera-gdk-play-f and then the path. So again, we can look at that over here. And again, I did it originally from this area here and copied and pasted in there. So this will be ran during login. So after I exit the machine, I log out and log back in. It'll run that file. If I shut down and restart and log back in, it still performs the same thing. So that is manually done. And again, if you needed to edit that, it is very limited as far as file types. And again, you can see this is not a script file. This is, I'm going to click in here again. This is a command line. This one's a little bit more difficult in my book for people to deal with in case they need to make changes. I recommend actually script files. So I'm going to get rid of that and then create a script file for this script here I'm going to talk about next. So you can create your own script files. They're extremely easy and I recommend them. And I would also install MPlayer. So let's get this out of the way. So MPlayer is a player that runs in the background. Let's try that again. Player. Got to be spelled right. MPlayer. So MPlayer is a Unix-like movie player. It does sounds also. Unix-like being because it's Linux. Linux is a Unix-like system if you did not know. Another one that's a Unix-like also is, believe it or not, Mac. Coding is done a little bit differently, but anyways, let's move on. MPlayer is very small, 6 megabytes. Install that. All right, and then later I'm going to talk about this piece of software called AutoCity, and you can actually find it in here. Sometimes it pops up in here. Let me scroll, click through these. Sometimes it'll actually be one of the favorites. And you can find it in sound and video. It's right here. This was, I believe it was produced in 2000, so this is almost 25 years old. It does a great job of sound files. You can chop the back end off, you can chop the middle off, you can chop the tail ends off. You can also convert sound files. It's a whopping 59 megabytes. Anyways, now let's talk about script files. Script files are a lot more versatile than just running direct commands. Now, script files are done with a text editor, and you can use whatever your favorite is. Just make sure the permissions are allowed to be run as a program, and don't use a word processor. That's a no-no. So if you don't like Xfce, use another text editor. There's plenty out there in your software manager. But you can use this one nonetheless. So I'm going to open this up. And we can see that this has only a couple of lines. If you don't mind, I will make this a little bit smaller. Actually, let me just resize it this way. And then pull it to the center. So the first line is called the bin bash statement. If you don't know what bash stands for, I'll open up terminal and give you a definition of this. man bash will define it. And it's a born again shell. There's lots of different shells out there for doing scripts. There's also the one that says sh, but it doesn't have as many bells and whistles as born again shell. There's also dash, if you've ever heard of that, but we're going to be using bash today. So that's literally where it's located. To produce those two front symbols, try your shift and 3 and 1 keys on your upper row, and that'll produce those symbols. There are no spaces in here, so it's /bin. That's where born again shell is. All right, so line 2 is just a descriptive line, and so is line 3. They just describe things. I could have left this off, so it'll just been 2 lines. But this is a login sound that we're trying to produce with this script file, and it's going to be using MPlayer for the music player, which also can do video, believe it or not. All you do is change the tail end, or at least that's my recommended for you. So you're going to leave the front end the same. So the front end is going to Tim's music login folder, the folder that's currently open. And then we just changed the name of the sound in here. It could be in OGG formats. It could be in different formats. So MPlayer is a lot more versatile than Canberra. MPlayer space and then the path. And then again, all I'm going to be doing is changing the tail end. All right, so currently, this is what it sounds like. So if I double click and it opens it up in a text editor, what you can do is right click on it and go send it to your desktop as the quickest way to test it. And you're not going to run it this way, you're going to test it. Keep in mind that this file here, I want that to be in here. Okay, so let's do that right now. It's auto start, add, and give it a name. As I pointed out to you, I like double A's on the front because it puts everything to the top. Login sound is what I'm going to use for a name. For the description, it's going to be using mPlayer. You'll need to install it first if you're going to use this script file. If you're going to use another player, then use another player. mPlayer plays stuff in the background. As a matter of fact, when I do the video, it won't have any player controls. When it does sound, nothing will open. It'll just play a sound when you log in. But the command, I'm not going to use a command line. I'm going to use a script file. And that is located in Tim's music login folder called sound.sh. And keep in mind, you need to activate this file as a script to make it work properly. And it's going to perform this on login. So currently it's sitting at the bottom. It's right here. If you want, you can click all settings and back in here, and it'll re-alphabetize it and it'll be at the top. I don't test it in here though. But you can look at the edit box and basically see that this script file goes to that path, and it's called sound.sh, which is a script file. And that is over here. Currently making that noise. Now, I'll show you a different way to activate this file for temporary purposes. It's Edit, Preferences, Advanced. Execute shell scripts. When I double click on this file, it'll execute it. Okay, so it's currently working off of this noise here. But I can pick anything I want to in here, because mPlayer can play MP3s, OGGs, WMAs, even MP4s. Wow. I am known for doing strange stuff to get people's attention. So anyways, however, I do like simple stuff. All right, a lot of people that have been around Unix before know what I'm talking about. Simple is good. So we're going to just open this with an editor. Okay, it's, again, a very simple script file. So I will make this larger for you, and we are going to change the tail end of this file to that right there. LM22, Linux Mint 22. MP4 is a video file, if you did not know. All of my videos are actually done with MP4s on my YouTube site. I'm going to save that. But I'm going to turn down the sound a little bit because I'm at 60. I'm going to crank that down to about 40. So before I actually run it through here, I'm going to run this using this player right here. Celluloid. You can see it and hear that it's playing music. I'm going to hit the spacebar to pause this. It's 11 seconds, and you can see when I recorded this was on 8:30 this morning. Mouse cursor is moving around a little bit. This is my other one. All right, so we got that. We have player controls. When I run it here, this will not have player controls. But again, as I pointed out to you, when I log out and log back in, it's going to be looking for this file right here. And that file is a script file. And that script file is the one that we're playing with, sound.sh. And we're not using sound here, we're using a video. And this is what you're going to see when I log in and out, if I use that silly file. There's no player controls, as you can see. However, I can pause this one using mPlayer because it's a video, unlike a song. Let's get rid of that silly stuff. But we can do that, in other words. All right, so let's go find a song now. Something different from these. So mPlayer can use OGG files. Again, these two came from USR Share Sounds Linux Mint. And I think the full path was, I forgot what the last part, oh, stereo. Yeah, that's where those two came from. So however you get your music into your system, whether you get them off the cloud or you put them in yourself, let's pick something different. So we can, we'll take Giovanni. And I have some MP3s, some WMAs, whatever it might be. Now, if your songs contain spaces in the names, I do recommend that you rename those without spaces. But we're going to copy one of these. And let's see what that one is. So that one's 3 minutes and 13 seconds. And so I opened it with celluloid. But what I'm going to do is actually copy this, put it in that Tim's login folder so we can play with it as a copy. And then I'm going to rename that, just pretend that it had spaces in it. So I'll just call that Grace 1. Or actually 8, how's that? Because that says Gracefully 8. So I'll rename that. I'll leave it as an MP3. So when I open this with celluloid, which is double click, because that's the default player, you can see that basically this player is playing this, and it's 3 minutes and 13. Now I can certainly use that in this here. So all I do is edit that and replace the name. Now if I wanted to cheat and the name is long, keep in mind no spaces though, I can do the rename thing, highlight the whole thing, right click and hit copy and hit cancel, because all I'm doing is cheating. And then I'm going to make that larger for you, and we're replacing that. So I'm going to highlight that with my mouse and right click and paste, so I don't have to type it in. Okay? But I'm not going to play that because it's too long. I want part of it. So when you install this piece of software here, you can do a lot of magic. Again, AutoCity has been around since 2000, so it's almost 25 years old. And it's 59 megabytes. Install that if you want to edit this file. Because I'm going to make it shorter than, what is the current rate? 3 minutes and 13. So I'm going to right click and edit that with that piece of software. A lot of people use this to actually make ringtones also. All right, so you can see the name, and you can see the name, and I'm sorry, the actual audio part of it. And start playing. Let's say you don't want the front end of this. And I want it to start here. So I can take my computer mouse. This is a little difficult to do with your touchpad, but take your computer mouse, click and highlight, and it does both channels. This is stereo. And then I'm going to hit delete to chop the front part off. Keep in mind, I have the original file in Tim's music folder already. But this is way over 3 minutes. And I'm trying to do a login sound with a piece of music that I may want less than 15 seconds. So click in here and drag to the right completely, and then hit your delete key. I just cut all of that off. If you want to play it, but I'm going to save this little piece. Okay, this is how people do ringtones. Or some. Now you have different file formats, including OGG, but since I'm going to actually leave the same file name called Grace 8 MP3, we're going to leave it that way. And then if you need to change the folder, you just do the browse thing. You may have to do that on your first pass. MP3 stereo, I'm keeping all the other defaults. It's going to complain because I'm using the same name. That's okay. Remember, this is a copy of the original. It's not the original. I always recommend playing with copies. All right, now that that's done, we're going to close that and say no. In here, I've already made the change to Grace 8, remember? Now I'm just going to run it. And it started it exactly where I edited that, and it'll terminate and not play the whole song. I'll just let it go. There, it stopped. So again, we can use the celluloid player to verify how long this is. It's 12 seconds. If that's still too long, you can still cut it. Or you can play the whole song. Again, that's all up to you. So all we're doing here, folks, is using a text editor to change the name of the songs. And you can be using different players, and I'm using MPlayer for a reason, because it plays in the background. And I'm using a Born Again shell script that really is just 2 lines. The middle lines are explaining things. A lot of times too on my shell scripts, what I do here is I put that symbol in front of that symbol there, and it doesn't even run this. Watch what happens when I do this. Nothing. I'm double clicking on it. It won't run because I commented that command out. So I'll need to put it back to normal by removing that symbol. That turns a different color when it does that, depending on your text editor also. And again, it starts where I chop that song out. And you can do this to any kind of song. So basically what I'm recommending to you as I start to close down here is if you want to run this directly, you can certainly use Canonbera with that statement right there. Okay, I'll cover that one more time. You can put a command line entry in here. Session and startup, auto start. And just punch it in directly in here and give it a name. And that will be performed on logins. It's Canonbera-GDK-play space-F. And the path to that Linux Mint desktop login is that. You can type this in a text editor and then copy it and run it directly into terminal to test it with. I'm saying it twice. Always a good idea to test things. But I do recommend script files if you want to do easy edits and put your own music, whether it's full songs or part of songs. And if it's part of some songs, then use that tool there to trim them to whatever need you have. Thank you for watching.